Joined by Corruption Watch Executive Director Karam Singh. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. So firstly, does that ease your mind that the President has now submitted his written responses to the Public Protector's questions?
Well, it does to a certain extent. Corruption Watch issued a statement earlier today because we were quite concerned about the delays in the response from the presidency. We have the utmost respect for the Office of the Public Protector. It's an important constitutionally mandated body. And, since this story broke, we've seen very little in the way of transparency or any kind of clear statement from the president, which brings us as a country, as a society, into his confidence about what happened. So the delays and the possibility that there would have to be a subpoena to get these questions was something which, to get these answers, was something which was incredibly concerning to us. So, this is obviously a positive development that the president has now complied and provided some answers.
We understand the President had asked and been granted that first extension and then had asked for a second extension, which was denied and which then resulted in possibly the need for a subpoena. That subpoena now no longer necessary, as he has answered. And one does understand that the Office of the Presidency must be incredibly busy. There's a lot going through his office. However, do you think it's worrisome that he allowed other matters to take precedence over something which has definitely called his integrity into question?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've looked to the president, we've looked to this administration in terms of what they've said, in terms of a new dawn, in terms of turning the corner on the fight against corruption and the era of state capture. And there has been some great progress in this period in terms of reestablishing key institutions such as SARS and the MPA. But, the longer this scandal goes on without any real clarity, and any explanation around the alleged wrongdoing, hurts the standing of the president and creates a climate of distrust within the country in relationship to the bona fides of the president. Oftentimes when we see corruption scandals throughout history, it's often the cover-up, which sometimes is worse than the original than the original transgressions. So, without the presidency coming forward with clear answers, it seemed like we were in a kind of moment where there was an attempt to sweep this under the rug or to cover it up. So hopefully that's not what's happening. Hopefully there's some, eventually the public will come to understand what the president's side of the story is, and we can move on from this scandal.
Do you think the source of that understanding is important? Because many people have said that, while the president has absolutely the right to say, well, and as he has done, that an investigation is taking its course and that he will, abide by those processes and let the information come to the South African public through those formal processes instead of from him. Some people saying that has been the wrong choice. What do you think are the important things to remember?
I think the important things to remember is that the president is the first citizen, that he holds quite a high level, the position that he holds requires high levels of trust between him and broadly the body politic. The president has been a champion, a campaigner in the fight against corruption. So when corruption allegations are leveled against him, there is an obligation upon him to address them. And the allegations in this case are quite serious, allegations that looked around issues of money laundering, unlawful holding of foreign currency, and this basic concern about are our senior leaders engaged in business activities where they would receive large sums of cash. I mean, things like that are absolute red flags to the type of corrupt criminal activity that we saw, that we've seen in the recent period, even from the kind of PPE scandal that we saw, where there was massive money laundering as a result of irregular procurement that took place. So the obligations are high upon the president. They're different obligations than obligations that we may have as common citizens. And I think we're fair to try to hold this president to high standards which he's set himself.
South Africans are almost forced to view this whole situation from two perspectives. One perspective questioning the actions of the president. Was there any illegality taking place during that time? But the other perspective is also the timing of the information coming out. And one has to take, cognizance of the fact that, the president's detractors are possibly using and manipulating this situation and the information at their disposal for their own political aims. What role does that bigger context play in how Corruption Watch is keeping an eye on the developments? Because the last thing South Africans want is for the guise of criminality to be used for political leverage.
Absolutely, and I think from the onset of this scandal, it was important for us to emphasize the context. So, part of the context is that these allegations come from, from a questionable source, from effectively an implicated person, if you read the Zondo Commission's report carefully, in the form of Arthur Fraser. So we are entering into a silly season with elective conferences and with the national elective conference at the end of the year. And we know that one way to try to neutralize political opponents is to try to tar them with a brush of corruption. So yeah, it's a context which we're absolutely mindful of. I think we need to look at these individual cases one by one. I think there will be other attempts to smear this president in the run-up to that party conference, and we'll have to look at the issues and the facts very carefully. But I think what was critical in this case was the fact that there weren't denials about the actual facts which happened in this case, and that the matter wasn't initially reported. So it seemed as if there was an attempt to kind of sweep it under the rug. So yeah, we're mindful of the context. We're mindful of the political factionalism that casts a shadow over allegations of corruption. But that also then doesn't absolve the president of the need to be transparent and to ultimately to be accountable. And it's not accountability to his political rivals. It's accountability broadly to the country and to the body politic.
With questions raised in the last year or two about the integrity of various organs of state in terms of security and information, South Africans very much look to organizations outside of government to try and figure out, are they going to trust information? What is Corruption Watch looking out for in terms of how this investigation is conducted and how the information is brought to South Africans to make sure that we can trust the results and the outcomes?
Well, I mean, I think, part of the context which we didn't discuss previously has been the ongoing battles between the Office of the Presidency and the Office of the Public Protector. I think that kind of comes off the table with the suspension of the former Public Protector, such that there's no reason for us to question the bona fides or the intent of the acting Public Protector. So we would expect the Office of the Public Protector to execute their mandate. They're absolutely within their constitutional rights to oversee the Executive Ethics Code and to put questions to officials with regard to that and to execute their mandate. Similarly with the Hawks, the Hawks have a mandate to investigate crime and high priority crime and organized crime. So the allegations on the table are quite serious in that regard. So, we also would expect the Hawks to execute their mandate appropriately. So I think the public is right to be skeptical broadly around the performance, over the recent period or lack of performance of authorities in law enforcement and the prosecution services. But I think now going forward, we do have some new leadership and we do have some legitimacy in that leadership. So let the investigations unfold, and if prosecutions and other consequences must flow from them, then something that we'll watch very, very closely.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us. We're going to leave it there. That was the Corruption Watch Executive Director, Karam Singh.